Welcome to the Fuzzy Mike, the interview series, the podcast, whatever Kevin wants to call it. It's Fuzzy Mike.
Well, hi. The experts, they say you must have a niche to have a successful podcast. I don't know how many times I've heard this and read this. Well, you know what my niche is? It's whatever interests me. Well, Klein, maybe that's why you only have one subscriber and it's your wife. You know what? You might be right. But the thing is, I like to think my interests are vast. And so I believe this podcast is for everyone. But if I have to narrow down the focus of the Fuzzy Mike, well, then you're going to get some talk about sports and current events. I'm a news junkie, plain and simple. I spend at least 2 hours a day reading news stories. We're going to talk about music, mostly, but not limited to death metal, black metal, gore metal, and poop metal. Yes, there are such categories, and I'm a huge fan. You're not familiar with poop metal? Okay. This is a band called Gudalax. I love them. Listen to this. That is so good. Also, when we talk about music, you're going to hear me talk about Miley Cyrus. I think she's the best singer on the planet. We're also going to talk about true crime, because if there's a serial killer documentary on Netflix or Prime any day of the week, I'm in. And we'll talk mental health, because these are the 4 areas that highly interest me, and they're topics on which I'm fairly knowledgeable, especially in the arena of mental health. And that's where we're going to start today. My mentality. I used to see a therapist, and when we did, we would just sit there and talk about things that bothered me, and they would listen. Guess how much that cost me? $160 an hour. Well, guess what? I'm going to talk about my stuff here to you, and it ain't going to cost me a thing. And the shit that I'm going to tell you here, absolutely true. And I need to share it with you. And not as a cry for help. In fact, it's just the opposite. I want to tell you about this to release it into the open, like a flock of doves at a funeral. But more importantly, to make you feel better about your own life. Just consider it my gift to you. I take a daily dose of 4 pills for my mental health. Listen to this podcast long enough, and you're going to learn more about my depression and suicidality than you ever care to know. I don't hide anything, and I don't candy coat anything either. When it comes to mental health, I'm raw, unfiltered, and I have some seriously bizarre ways of coping. So now that you know that, this probably won't shock you. I take my pills once a day, right before I go to bed at night. And I do this thing every time I take my pills, and it's really bothersome. Any therapist or psychiatrist will diagnose it as OCD, but I've been OCD all my life. This elevates OCD to another level. I'm calling this ECD, empathetic compulsive disorder. What happens is, I'll pour my pill from the bottle into my hand. I only try to pour 1. It's a 1 per day pill, not a 2 per day. It's been this way for 17 years. They know this. But sometimes the pills, they like to fuck with me. And here's how they do it. If 2 pills happen to fall into my hand, a scenario which is often played out due to my Parkinson's-like tremors, then I project a scenario onto that pellet pair. A scenario? The hell are you talking about, Klein? Okay, here's the example. Last night, I poured one of my Effexor pills into my hand. Then another one slid in with it. My thought was, oh my gosh, that pill wants to give up its life so that the other pill can live another day or 2. Then I started wondering, what kind of relationship those 2 pills have? Are they boyfriend and girlfriend, husband and wife, wife and wife? Because that could be a possibility. What I end up doing when this happens is I put both of those pills back in the bottle and I do another pour, praying that only 1 pill comes out. I do not want to go through the torment another time because it always gets darker. Like, if 2 pills come out a second time, then I'm convinced these 2 were parent and child. And that one really gets to me because, well, children are involved. But Kev, you could eliminate this quandary by just reaching into the pill bottle, grabbing 1, and that would be that. Yeah, in theory, that sounds simple, but in my mind, I'd be the executioner. By pouring the pills into my hand, I'm giving the pill tribe jurisdiction over which one to cast out. I can live with that. Much easier than I can just snuffing out an inanimate life through my own condemnation. Because let's not forget, once that pill is swallowed, it's dead. Its purpose is no more. And therein lies just one of the multitude dilemmas in my life. These prescribed aids are supposed to help in the alleviation of my psychosis, not create new cognitive conundrums that increase my self-loathing. I've got some relief, because you either feel better about your own life now, which if you do, you're welcome, or I've given you something that now muddies up your own mind, meaning I'm not alone. In the news, a report has surfaced regarding former President Trump and his dislike for dogs. Trump is one of only 2 presidents to not have a pet during his time in the White House. This was backed up when his former wife, Ivana Trump, wrote in her book, Raising Trump, Family Values from America's First Mother, saying, quote, he wasn't a fan of dogs. I don't know why people are surprised by this. I thought it was common knowledge that Trump was a cat man.
Grab him by the pussy, grab him by the pussy, grab him by the pussy.
A massive marijuana grow operation was discovered inside a Tennessee church after a weeks-long investigation. Upon executing a search warrant, law enforcement found around 2,000 plants, and one person was taken into custody. I've heard about getting high on the Lord, but never getting high with the Lord.
You wanna get high, do it on Jesus.
Finally, serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer's dad, Lionel, died at the age of 87. Strangely, that's the answer Jeffrey himself gave authorities when they asked him how many victims he had cannibalized, saying, I 87. I 87.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Chew on that one a while. Now, we started the episode by talking about mental health, my mental health in particular, and we're going to continue talking about mental health with my guest. He is a licensed therapist, but Marc Boriosi has led an incredible life, including spending 10 months in a federal prison for money laundering, fraud, and tax charges. But his life is even more interesting than that, okay? He's danced with Sting. He's toasted with Jason Statham. Anna Nancy Wilson of Heart, he's flirted with them. He's raised money for kids with Anne Hathaway, and he knows Kevin Bacon, John Voight, Roger Waters of Pink Floyd, Richard Gere, Meryl Streep, Alice Cooper, Al Pacino, Martin Scorsese, Steve Martin, Tom Hanks, Paul Rudd, Bryan Cranston. The list is extensive. He's hosted film festivals, awards ceremonies, Broadway show after parties, charity events, celebrity birthday parties, comedy roasts, and he went to law school, and he's worked on Wall Street. He's also been in a gunfight. So we're going to talk about all that stuff right now. So I was just talking about your credentials. I was just talking about all of the things that you've experienced in life. How did your life become so interesting?
Oh, one step at a time.
But I think people can look at their life and like you've had an interesting life. There are seminal moments that lead us to where we end up being or end up who we become. So what were some of those seminal moments that you can point to that, hey, you know what, this is why I became who I am, and this is why I got to meet the people I got to meet?
I would say varying trajectories in some aspects. Family took me in some places, career in other places, and then my desire to be around, those events and those people. I just sort of made it happen. I tell the story in the past. One thing that motivated me to get into some of the things I've done is when I was younger, I used to go to New York City once in a while for fun. And what I soon learned was it's not easy to get into certain clubs.
Yeah, true.
Dress a certain way, look a certain way. Obviously, if you bring a bunch of girls with you, the doorman lets you in. And I was not in the position to do that. So I'd be turned away a lot. So I decided to just, I was young then, but I accepted that and said, I'm going to do something about it. And I eventually grew into hosting those parties, creating events of my own where, I was the first one. I guess you would say. And then, that motivated me to do more and more. And then I got into a lot of charitable work, which is where I met a lot of the people that I met, some charity events, fundraising stuff for various organizations, right from there.
What causes do resonate with you?
Well, now more than anything, probably recovery from drug and alcohol addiction.
Mm-hmm. You've made that your life's work now.
It's a large part of my work now. I sort of branched beyond that, but I still incorporate that in everything I do because I think I'm pretty good at it. There's an organization called Music Cares, which is a lot of entertainment people that help people in recovery, which I like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I like Eric Clapton's event he has down at Crossroads. I think it's coming up pretty soon where he has a large guitar festival, raises a bunch of money for people in need and things like that. One of the organizations I helped with was a thing called the Lollipop Foundation, which was, that's where I met Anne Hathaway. She was there. Very nice girl. And
what does the Lollipop Foundation do?
It's many years ago. They help kids.
Yeah.
Well, which makes sense.
It does.
And,
my experience with philanthropy, I started my own nonprofit in 2006 for children with cancer. And at the cancer hospital, they have radio lollipop, which is why I was wondering if there might be a correlation between those two.
Very possible.
Yeah.
And that event was the premiere of the movie Get Smart with Steve Carell. And it was a small group of people. And then we had an after party and it was a huge success.
I like how you flippantly just throw these celebrity names around. Yeah, Eric Clapton's event's coming up. That's where I met Anne Hathaway. That's where I hung out with Steve Carell. But your laundry list of celebrity names continues. I mean, what's it like being in the presence of those people?
Well, I've never been an autograph guy. I've always wanted to be someone that was comfortable around those people and just like one of them. Which early on was a complete facade. While I'm with them, I'm freaking out inside. I'm nervous. I don't know what to say. I have a funny story that goes with that, which is not too long ago, actually. But it's, I sort of got over that and just sort of treat them like people. I think they'd like that.
Well, with your therapy background and what you do for a living now, help people overcome addictions and help people with depression and stuff like that. Why do we get this sense of putting those celebrities on a higher level than we put ourselves?
I would say insecurities and things of that nature, and envy, and things like that. When you look at those people that are like famous and stuff, and they and there's pros and cons of fame, obviously.
Oh yeah.
But the majority of us want that. We want that attention. We want that grandiosity. We want to be validated for who we believe we are. The downside is that once you get that famous, it's hard to shake it.
Well, like Taylor Swift was named Time Person of the Year. I don't think she can go anywhere without some sort of public scrutiny or somebody trying to get an autograph or picture. What kind of life is that?
I would say it's exhausting.
It has to be.
I think Jim Carrey kind of said it best. Was he's stepping outside the limelight because he's tired of playing a character. He just wants to be him. And I think that's fantastic. To have that self-realization. This isn't fun for me anymore. And move on.
I never heard Carrie say that, but it's very similar to why I retired from radio after 30 years. You just get tired of being this entertainer. You get tired of being this person, and people think it makes up 100% of your being, and it's like maybe 10%.
Right. It makes me think of a quote by Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, where he says, my mask of sanity is beginning to slip, or something like that. It gets so tiring of keeping a smile. It's like I'm afraid to be me around anyone because everyone's taking pictures and scrutinizing everything I say and do.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's so easy to disappoint people. You don't mean to do it, but people have their own. It's so subjective, and you might do something that somebody gets upset with, and you don't mean to do it. And so for me, it was easy just to fade into the background.
Yeah. As far as comfort, probably the best. Well, it's actually twofold. I went to a birthday party for Philip Glass, the composer.
Yeah.
And his son is a very good friend of mine, so he invited me to that. And I've known Philip for quite some time as well. When I used to go to New York, I'd stay at his house, which is really surreal. If you know Philip Glass, Oscar-winning, classical composer,
For sure.
To wake up on his couch at 2 a.m. to find him making tea, and he simply offers you something. You want me to make you some tea? It's like, no, I'm just sleeping. But it's very surreal. But at his birthday party, which was upstairs in a small little restaurant, a very small venue, Meryl Streep was there, which she was delightful. Paul Simon was there with Edie Brickell and Richard Gere. Now, I was very comfortable around Meryl Streep. I was very comfortable around Paul Simon and Edie Brickell. We spoke most of the night. I spoke to Edie quite a bit about what I do for a living, and she was very interested and super nice. Paul's always very friendly. Richard Gere, interesting enough, was always one of my favorites. And when he walked in, I kind of froze.
Really?
I did I got to Google something. I knew about his inn up in, I believe, Connecticut, but I couldn't remember the exact name. I think it's Bedpost Inn or something like that. And I quickly Googled, on my phone, just to have something to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I came off the opposite. I think I came off like ridiculous, like forcing it, and I think he picked up on that pretty quick, but he was incredibly cordial and very nice. So it was a great event.
So you say you're a fan of Richard Gere. What
Mm-hmm.
Richard Gere role made you the fan?
Oh man, probably American Gigolo, I think. When
That's going back.
yeah, going way back. Obviously, Pretty Woman. I just
Officer and a Gentleman was for me.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those things, and just following his career going on, he can do so many different things. He does it very well, and he's very charismatic. And the other thing is that at that time, I do sort of adhere to some Eastern philosophy beliefs in my life. I've been in the presence of the Dalai Lama a couple times, and Richard co-founded the Tibet House in New York City. So that interested me as well. So
why didn't you just jump off right there and start talking about that?
Dang it.
Right? I mean, you have.
It would have been an easy one. Yeah.
It would have been an easy one.
I panicked. I Googled. I'm like, I want to set myself apart and know something that no one else does, but everyone knows about this stuff. So it was ridiculous. But he was incredibly polite and super.
That's the thing. You want to talk to people and on their level. But for me, I was just telling a friend about this morning in promoting you being on the podcast. I want to find the perfect conversation, and I want to find that one question that you have never been asked that you're like, oh my gosh, this guy did his homework. That to me is that's the highest praise that you can give an interviewer.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I used to interview celebrities as well, and musicians and such. Three Doors Down, Bullbeat, quite a long list. And that was my thing: is I would scrutinize their history to find something they're not expecting.
Mm-hmm.
For Chris Henderson with Three Doors Down, I dug up this thing about that he was involved with this. Runyon Foundation for Drug and Alcohol Addiction. And I brought that up towards the end, and he went, oh, you know that? I'm like, yeah. And then we went off of that. And it changes the dynamic of the whole conversation.
It does, because they know that you've done your homework, you've done your research, you care about them. And it also goes back to, I do this all the time. When somebody's wearing a name tag in the checkout line or as a server, I address them by name. It's amazing how it sets the tone for a wonderful transaction. People, they just want to be cared about.
Right, and you think about it when artists are doing all these interviews. I mean, they hear the same questions.
Absolutely.
No. So it's like, what's going to set me apart? And I've used addiction actually for like some of the celebrities I've talked to and that suffered from addiction in the past and doing well. I would touch on that a little bit. and that would set me apart because they're not expecting that. They're talking about the concert they're on, the upcoming release of a new, Veer album or whatever. And I'm hitting them with like a real life question.
Well, Marc Boriosi, that is a very real testament to your conversation skills, because that's highly personal and some people don't want to talk about that.
I typically only did that with those that I knew would be okay, because they probably were open about it in the past, because you're right. I know, for people like Robert Downey Jr., you don't go near them.
Oh God, no.
No. Very probably the most successful one I had was a gentleman named Walter Trout, who was a blues guitarist.
Okay.
He was in a band called Candid.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And that, I was doing a 40-minute interview, and his struggles with drugs and alcohol through his life made up 20 minutes of it.
Wow.
And it definitely, I don't think I was even allotted that amount of time with him, and he just didn't want to stop talking to me. And it's I recorded, it's a beautiful piece that I actually have used in treatment, to help, addicts understand how it affects everyone and how to get through it, because it has a very happy ending as he stayed sober.
Is it cathartic for them to talk about this, or is it that they're looking to atone for past behavior? Why are some people so proponents of talking about it, and then others are like, no, I don't want to get into that?
I think it depends on your attitude towards recovery, as far as how you got clean and sober. If you follow 12 steps in AA, people get very accustomed to talking about their story. They get let go of the guilt and shame of where it took them, and now it's a success story. It's like, I'm doing this, and you can too. And then the big message of recovery is you can't do it alone, and it's a community thing. Addiction lives in the dark and isolates. So the opposite would be community openness and getting yourself out there and support it. But I think there's a time and a place too. Going back to Robert Downey Jr., if you're promoting a movie, that's not quite the place to get into that. Because it is so personal. So I'm, like I said, I'm very cautious with it. Like, talking to again, Three Doors Down, Chris Henderson, he was extremely nice about discussing what he does to stay sober. And this is backstage at one of his shows. That we're having this conversation in a green room where there's an open bar. And he says, it's hard out here. And one of the questions was, how do you stay sober on tour? And he said, it's tough because there are a lot of people that use out here.
Oh God, yeah.
So he gave a step down thing. Here's what I do. I read my literature every day. I reach out to sponsors, support. I do the work. Doesn't matter where I am, which, is a tremendous, thing for people in treatment that think they're so alone to hear, that, you can do it too. I mean, he's doing it on tour while people are, getting high in the next room. It's up to you,
Is there such a thing as a healthy addiction?
Well, it's almost like functioning alcohol. It's an oxymoron, healthy addiction. I mean, if you're healthy, you're healthy. If you're claiming to be an addict, you're not healthy. So I mean, if you look at the definition of addiction to me right now, outside of chemical dependency, it really comes down to the first step of the 12 steps. Is your life currently unmanageable due to your drug of choice? And are you continuing to do that despite the behavior it's causing? Basically, you can't stop. Even though you're getting hurt and hurting everyone around you, you can't stop. So that's addiction. So a healthy addiction, I think, would be an oxymoron. You can't be both. I know I get the idea of where you're going. Is how can I turn this issue, this disease, into something that might benefit me?
There are a lot of former addicts addicted to substances and alcohol who trade that for the addiction of running, and it's just a switch in behavior. And so I was wondering if, like running 100 miles a day, like some of these people try and do.
Yeah. The difference there is it an addiction? And how I would define that would be is, now, whatever you were doing prior to that was causing your life to be a disaster. You've switched to running. Now, is running causing your life to be a disaster?
Okay.
If it's not, then it wouldn't be an addiction.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. I mean, in recovery, we talk about drug and alcohol, and then you go to treatment, you start going to meetings, right?
Mhm.
This is how really fickle addiction can be, and if you're not careful, it finds a way. I'm working with this gentleman whose wife is really upset because he's never around because he's always drinking or inside, So she's like, I just want my husband back. I'm tired of him not being around and drinking all the time and all that. And I said, all right, we'll see what we can do. Well, he turned it around and stopped drinking. And he started going to meetings. But then he started going to so many meetings that his wife was angry about never having her husband around.
Yeah.
So even recovery can be an
Addictive.
addiction.
Sure.
Yeah, addictive. Right. Yeah. If it's causing your life to be unmanageable.
Like we said, addiction is a behavior. How does it start?
There are various, possibilities there. I've been watching that.
It's highly personal for each addict.
Pretty much. I mean, some people say it's all trauma related. It's all bad childhood. It's all, it's all this, all that. It's all those things. But it's also good stuff. When I would do a lecture in front of 100 people at a treatment center I worked for, I would at some point I'd say, all right, who here would say they had a good childhood? And half of them would raise their hand. I'd say, who had a bad one? Half of them raised their hand. And the disease doesn't care.
No, it doesn't.
The problem with addiction and the disease is that, acceptance of it is all hindsight. You don't realize you have it as you're sinking in the quicksand. It's when you wake up, dust yourself, look back and go, wow, that really caused a lot of damage in my life. I must have a problem, because it fools you the whole time while you're using. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. And, as you're using, you will defend your, free will to use till your dying breath, not realizing the damage that it's causing.
Can an addict be helped if they don't want to be helped?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes back to the 12 steps in the whole thing. What did Bill and Bob say? The first thing you need is a desire. That's why the first chip is a desire chip. You have to have the willingness to do the work, regardless of what that entails, And so often I would work with clients who would only do what we told them to do if it was in line with what they wanted to do. And that's not recovery. That's addiction. It's like I'm only, I'm not going to do what I need to do. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You got to let go of the want for a while. You get those back over time, but the big message of recovery is, follow someone else's direction for a while.
You also do a lot of work with depression, and I want to know what the correlation is between addiction and depression. Does one lead to the other, or are they both so entwined, so symbiotic that there's really no separation?
Well, I mean, you could suffer from depression without being an addict.
True.
The tricky thing there is that addiction mimics the signs and symptoms of mood and personality disorders. If you're always taking sedatives, you're going to appear depressed. If you're always taking stimulants, you're going to appear manic. If you take both, you're going to go see a doctor. He's going to tell you you're bipolar, and put you on meds. And there was a period of time when bipolar disorder was so misdiagnosed that people were being put on meds for antidepressant without a mood stabilizer for the manic part of it, which is the more dangerous part, that it was causing the cycles to increase. And so they'd be going up and down more often, so you really have to do a good history when you're meeting with a client before you prescribe anything to see what's going on.
Yeah.
You miss the mark, and then that could cause, more pain.
I was one of those misdiagnosed in 1995 when I first went and saw a psychiatrist for what I thought was bipolar disorder. That's what they called it. But no, it's just straight out depression, man. That's all it is. Right. And it's a different way to be treated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Misdiagnosed, misprescribed, all the,
So how do you get somebody? Because I love this quote that you say in one of the papers that you've written on Medium, and it's basically saying that there's happiness and there's sorrow and there's grief and there's sadness. There's all the range of emotions, and we're supposed to feel them.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why can't we always be happy?
It's not human. I mean, that's the fantasy is, if someone's not smiling, there's a problem, we are emotional beings, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, if you look at feelings wheel, which I used to use in treatment quite a bit, which has all the different emotions on it, we're supposed to feel all those things. You know, if you never felt bad, how would you know what good is?
That's very true.
You know, and the trap is trying to avoid those feelings. You know, that's the trap. You know, you have to process all of it. You know? Otherwise, you don't increase what you could consider your emotional intelligence, which is I have to handle every feeling that comes.
So what is the key to living in the moment?
Mindfulness, awareness. You gotta sort of let go of the past. You learn from it, let it go, and not focus on the future at all. To me, it makes a ton of sense, because if you think about depression, or you think about negatives, you can't change the past.
No, you can't.
You have to accept. Can't change it. So you have to accept what it was. So if you focus solely on the past, you're going to have a lot of regrets. You're going to wish you made a left when you really made a right. That's always going to cause depression, because you can't change it. So you got to let that go. So the past is where depression lives.
Okay.
Almost. The future, projecting, that's where anxiety lives, because of the unknown and uncertainty. It's very stress related, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
What's going to happen? I don't know. So you got to sort of let that go, and not project, fantasy and things like that, because very often humans will fantasize extremes. They'll fantasize worst case scenarios or best case scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Really, if someone's thinking about winning the lottery, they don't go, "Oh, I think I won $5." Their fantasies about the millions, which is understandable. But planning is different. Planning, we do have to plan in life, and that's an important thing, but it's not projecting. Planning is setting things up for success. But the only time you can plan is now.
Yeah.
I always find it interesting that I'll ask you, do you know the demographic of human being that is focused on the present probably more than anyone? I think they've mastered
Kids?
the ability.
Is it kids?
It's kids. Yeah.
And the only reason I know that is because I had a psychology professor say that the reason time goes by so slow when you're a kid is because you're focused on that day. The reason why time accelerates when you're an adult is because you're living event to event.
Right.
And
yeah, it goes fast.
for sure. When you by the way, is this the longest you've ever gone in a conversation when somebody hasn't brought up your federal prison stint?
Lately.
Okay, good. Because I mean, yeah, obviously that's a big part of your life, and that's how I want to get into that. But before we do, I want to talk about your father, your late father, who passed away in 2017, world-renowned psychiatrist, and probably the greatest all-time Italian name I've ever heard, Guido Boriosi. That's just a kiss the ring name right there, brother.
Can't get more Italian than that.
No, you cannot. What did you learn from him?
Everything I do. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I have a master's degree in psychology. I practice in the field. But everything I learned from him growing up. And not so much by him teaching me, just sort of being around him, and sort of absorbing, everything he says and does. And yeah, pretty much. I mean, he was such an amazing man that, one of the best compliments I ever got when I was, in treating addiction in the rehab was, this woman said, you remind me a lot of your father.
Wow.
I didn't even know she knew him.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh wow, so if I echo anything that he preached or talked about, I find that that's what I want to do. Carry on his legacy.
What kind of father was he?
Very kind, very compassionate. Not a huge talker. Never yelled. Always just rational. Very rational. The polar opposite from my mother. But but yeah, he was just, you could always approach him, and he didn't have a lot of friends. He had some acquaintances, but not a lot of friends. And that was a lesson he taught me without even realizing this. He was sick for the last 4 years of his life, and not many people came around. He he pretty much died alone, and it was amazing to me how, revered you could be in the world, while you're practicing and helping others. And then sort of, kind of forgot it.
It's an amazing tribute to your mentality and your personality that you learned from him just through observation.
I gotta say, I mean, I miss him, obviously. I wasn't sad when he died. I was sad I was going to miss him, but he did his time, and it was time to go. He suffered towards the end because his body kind of gave out in many ways, but cognitively he was still there.
Yeah.
So he was like imprisoned in his own body, which was hard to watch. So when they called and said your father passed, I was like, thank God.
Well, I've often heard that we grieve because of ourselves. It's proper to let someone who's suffering, let them go. And the reason we're sad is because it affects us worse than it affects them.
Yeah. One memory that pops up, which means a lot to me, was towards the end, maybe a year before he died. I was in his bedroom, helping him shower and getting him dressed, putting his socks on. I was on the floor putting his socks on. And he just looked at me and he said, Mark, I'm so sorry you have to do this.
Oh.
And I said, Dad, I get to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that goes right in line with your philosophy that, acceptance and the way that you perceive things is how you're going to react to them.
Right.
And that's directly from your teachings, and that's directly from what I've gleaned from the multitude of things that I've read from you. Here, I'm looking at your website right now, and it says that happy family, impossible without trust. And it says our comfort is our family when we occasionally falter. You're a father of two. How do you take the experiences that you have had and relay them to your children?
Oh God, just I guess by example, by doing it, just being there for them. I mean, they're 5 and 3, so they're pretty much crazy all the time.
They're constantly happy, right?
They're constantly something, but they're a handful. But I think they're perfect. But I guess I'm biased.
Wow, you have every right to be biased. They're your blood, man. That's your offspring, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So when you did have that 10-month falter, what did your dad say? How did he support you? And what was the relationship like then?
Oh, he was a part of it from the beginning. Before we got in trouble, he was very supportive of everything I was doing, and then he paid attention to the direction it was going, and he knew my true feelings about not wanting to be in that, and my struggles with getting out before it was too late. But he never was ashamed of me, nothing. He got it because I would share with him where I was at all the time. So I'll say, Dad, this is not going well, and I don't think I can get out. It would have been very messy to get out at that time. And by the time I had those real thoughts, the damage was already done. So
yeah,
I wouldn't get very far. When the FBI came in and closed us down, I had a sense of relief because then this was, I'm going to be facing some horrible things, but I'm out of what I've been doing. The situation that I was in, which even they knew that, because I think I even signed relief or something like that.
Well, in a way, that's got to kind of be like addictive behavior, because an addict has to hide their behavior from the people around them. Committing a crime, you have to hide that behavior from the people around you.
Right. Yeah.
And so how quickly did you age during that time? Because that's stress, brother.
Gosh, the beginning was tough because there were so many unknowns, because I wasn't even understanding at the time that, how much trouble I could be in, and then I remember asking one of the agents when they were, in our office, on the day they blasted in, I said, how much time do you think I'm going to do? And he said, probably 2 years. And I was like, whoa, which again is not that much time in hindsight. Could I, looking back, could I have done 2 years? Yeah. Could I have done 5? Yeah. Most of my friends were doing 10 or 20. But it was terrifying to think of how it was going to affect my mother more than anyone. My father, I knew he'd be with me the whole time, and my wife at the time, she hung out for a little while and then she got tired.
In your writings on medium.com, I want to pull this up because I want to get it absolutely correct. You say that on September 24th, 2009, 2 of my closest friends volunteered to drive me to jail. It was an incredibly long yet ridiculously quick ride. And you say shortly after you were processed, everything changed and you felt peace. How do you feel peace about that place?
I remember being in the holding cell. And I was all by myself, the big cinder block cell. Everything was sort of white, colored, off-white. And I was alone. I was alone, for a while. And I remember just staring at the cinder block in front of me because it's like, it's in your eyesight. It's right there. So I'm just staring there, and I just said, the sense of peace came on me because I said, at this moment, I really don't have a past. I don't have a future. I'm just here. Which gets back to the kid-like mentality. Mm-hmm. But I'm just going to focus on the now. I can't change the past. And I can't do anything about the future.
And then you go on to write that once you accepted that, it became easy.
Yeah, it did.
10 months in a federal penitentiary became easy?
It really did. Probably the worst day I had there was the halfway mark.
Okay.
Where we're down on me, like I do this whole thing over again, but that was fleeting. It was like kind of like comical because it as you get a routine in prison, the days get easier. Things move faster. Once the initial shock of how did I move? How's this my life? Dissipates. Then it's like, all right, this is my life. And so I made some good friends there. I made some pretty good friends. And then you hang out with them and make some pizza and drink coffee, and then the next day turns next day. You do some extracurricular things. I used to watch some movies once in a while, and play football, which is ridiculous because I'm not a football player. And, but it was a great day. Actually, it was shortly after I got there. They had a gentleman walking around asking who wants to do football in the league, and I don't know if I felt pressure or what, or I wanted to be cool or what. I said, I'll do it. Yeah, sign me up, I was put on I was the only white guy in this all black team. And we had a big turnout that day because everybody wanted to see, see how I did, I did terrible. In fact, I broke my finger. It's flag football, and I guess I tried to stop some guy running 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I broke my finger. And I didn't even go to the infirmary because that was considered crazy to go to the infirmary for anything. Healthcare wasn't the best in there, and I just let it heal. But it was a funny day. People, so by doing that, I mean, people quickly liked me, for having the guts to go out there and give it a shot. So that definitely helped, And it's funny, prison, I was at a federal camp, so it's not very big, and, they're two units, quite a few people, obviously, in the units, but you say hi to the same people like 500 times a day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, every time you walk by the same, it's like, hey, what's up? Hey, what's up? And or you do a lot of fist bumps, and it's like nonstop, so you get to know everybody really well. And if you want to, a few guys that I stayed away from.
So do you have to constantly look over your shoulder, and are people constantly coming after you?
No. I mean, what would happen is because it's a low security, facility, people there that might have been violent in the past earned their way to be at a lower level.
Okay.
And they're not about to screw that up and go back to a higher level, So everyone kind of gets along. I mean, it was not like white collar as much as I expected, and that was a myth where it's a lot of drugs, things of that nature. But there was a lot of people coming, down the security list, but from medium, high, medium to low to the camp, that's an accomplishment. And those guys are usually doing like 15, 20 years. So their mind is on I want to get out of here, not. something stupid and go backwards, so that was good. For some guys that came in, they had like 3 months or of incarceration, or 2 months, or 1 month. Most they kind of be sort of left alone. Like, I don't want to say ostracized, but a little bit, and
Are they treated like almost like visitors? Yeah, they're not going to be here real long. They're like a visitor.
yeah, no one wants to invest time and get to know somebody if they'll be gone soon, and so it was, suspect. But,
Yeah, being incarcerated, is it more about retribution or is it more about rehabilitation?
There was really no rehabilitation.
Really?
They talk about that. Some of my friends signed up for the drug and alcohol rehabilitation program, and what that did was it got you out of work. If you're the kind of person, you have to work every day, and it would get you out of work. So, and what they would do is they'd go watch movies, like current movies, it seems, and so it was like a pleasant thing to do. I said no to that because first I wasn't going to lie and try to do that and be something I wasn't. And then it kind of bit them in, because after you leave prison, if you're in that program, you're mandated to continue treatment. During your supervised release. So, you might have someone, like me, who's not an alcoholic or an addict, having to go to outpatient therapy for a year, which is like, continuing the facade, just to get out of work, I actually had one of the hardest jobs there, which was a janitor in the medium prison, which was attached to my prison. So every day, me and 2 guys had to walk down the mountain to this medium prison, and we'd clean, mop, you name it, we did it, And the issue there was it was so easy to get in trouble because if the COs or the warden, got to be the warden, saw you slacking off, and he could just, if you didn't wipe something down and he was in a bad mood, he'll throw you what's called the shoe, or the segregated housing unit for like a week. So I used to see a few guys that just got hammered. So doing minimal things.
The day you go in and the day you come out, how much of a change was there in you?
Oh, huge. Yeah, probably. I mean, physically a lot, because I didn't eat poorly while I was there, which you usually can, and I worked out all the time. So I left there probably the best physical shape I've ever been in. Plus you got the time.
Yeah, true.
So I took advantage of that, but psychologically, emotionally, I think I was very well off. I started helping people while I was in there.
Well, I was going to ask that. Did you use your therapy background to start helping inmates?
I did, and not on purpose, just conversation, advice, I had one gentleman that was really upset because of his wife or something like that, and then we just talked and got him through that. And then, I think it ended poorly after he left, but he did well there.
How big of a difference can that make? Just talking about it, just opening up about it.
A huge difference. That's why talk therapy is so important. I mean, one of the issues that people struggle with is asking for help and then accepting help. What people have to realize is that the problem can't be the solution.
Okay.
So if you're in your head all the time trying to find the solution to the problems, it's going to be very difficult. In doing so, you got to reach out and ask for a second opinion, advice, other perspectives. You could certainly help with that, but you're not going to really think your way out of an issue that you created, that your mind is telling you is okay.
That's so true, because that leads to anxiety, which, it's a constantly evolving circle.
It's like a gerbil on a wheel.
It is exactly what I was picturing was that little gerbil running on that wheel. Yeah. Yep. So you're a fascinating individual, my brother. I've really enjoyed this conversation. But there is one other thing I want to ask you about. Were you really in a gunfight?
Yes. Well, yes and no. I say no because I didn't have a gun.
Okay.
But me and a friend, we were down. We went to Tampa to try and collect some money that was owed. We didn't bring guns, but the gentleman that owed us money did. Now, I did have security with me at the time, and he had a gun, but I think he pulled it. But it was more dancing around than anything else. It's like, one man holding the gun towards the other man, the other man holding it, and they're like doing this, trying to. Neither one shot. It was
Still, I wouldn't want.
Yeah. For some reason, I was really calm and collected that day. I was walking around just, hands in my pockets, and then the police came and they're like, get your hands out of your pockets. I was like, all right, whatever. And then they let us go. They just said, all right, you guys, they checked the security's credentials and said, all right, you guys can go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just another fascinating aspect of the life of Marc Stephen Boriosi. Amazing, amazing stuff. So Boriosi.com is your website. We can go there and read your writings, and then we can book appointments with you, right?
You can. If you want to book an appointment, you could do that there. I might as well tell you, I do have a book coming out.
Well, people have been asking, when are you going to write your book? And you're like, well, I don't know.
I know. Well, this one's sort of a play on my father's philosophies that I sort of incorporated and sort of put my own spin on. It's called The Compass of Self, and it should be out probably this month. So I was, able to get something finally on paper that I could, get out there a little bit. And I'll probably do more on that if this goes all right.
Can you describe The Compass of Self briefly? What does it mean?
It's a guide to help people through, some of the things that we talk about: acceptance, assertiveness, boundaries, relationships, love. It's a whole bunch of different chapters. I'm just really, just a myriad of my philosophies on these different topics. The title I just like. Well, yeah. Is
acceptance giving up?
Oh, not at all.
Not at all.
Surrender is giving up.
Surrender's giving up, yes. But acceptance, doesn't that mean that, I don't know, maybe I have it in my mind that I'm just thinking about this in specific terms or specific scenarios. But to me, acceptance is like, well, I can't change this, and so I might as well not fight about it anymore.
But what are you doing? You're accepting it, which means, potentially embracing for change. It's an important thing, acceptance. It's right. We have to accept what we can't change, right?
Yeah.
Change the things we can. It's called surrender because it brings peace. Most people will struggle with trying to change things that they can't change.
Well, isn't it the only thing we can't change the way we view things? Everything else is out of our control, right?
Everything else is out of our control. It's yeah. So it's really, how do we react to things that are out of our control? We need to accept that. Things are not always going to go my way. Okay, I'll accept it. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop playing the game of life. But not accepting that is going to do me a disservice.
It will definitely make things a lot worse if you can't accept it, because you're going to try and, there's a brick wall in front of you and you're going to continue to try and go through that.
That's right. Yep.
So, all right. What is the one, you've got a captive audience here, the one philosophy, the one quote, the one takeaway that you want people to take with them after this conversation?
Oh, gosh. It's not one of my own, but it's a quote I like a lot. It's, I'm going to butcher it, but it's basically...
I got a bunch of quotes in front of me here, and it's from Paul Olinger, MD. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today.
He gave that to AA.
He gave it to AA.
Yeah.
No, it is a strong quote, and it's one that I had never heard before until I started researching you, and I found that, and I'm like, I'm going to try and incorporate that into my daily life, because I'm a worrier. I have anxiety. I have depression, and it's all because of things I wish I would have done or things that I don't know how they're going to turn out.
Yeah, and that's right on page 417 of the Big Books of Alcoholics Anonymous.
That's on 417 of the Big Book of that quote is?
Yes.
That's amazing that you still know what page that's on. So cool. Well, buddy, I wish you all the success in the world with the book. I will be looking at your website, boriosi.com, BORIOSI.com, to find out when it's available. And I'm looking forward to reading it.
Thank you very much.
Brother, I appreciate the conversation and much success to you, man. Thanks for what you do.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome, Mark. And my thanks to Marc Boriosi for joining me. And my thanks to you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Doing so, well, could lead to you getting your comment mentioned in a future episode. Please share the Fuzzy Mike with your friends. As our Fuzzy followers grow, the more indebted I am to you. To stay connected with the Fuzzy Mike and get behind the scenes content, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And for video, please subscribe to the Fuzzy Mike YouTube channel. The Fuzzy Mike is hosted and produced by Kevin Klein. Production elements by Zach Sheesh at the Radio Farm. Social media director is Trish Klein. Join us next Tuesday for a new episode of the Fuzzy Mike. We're going to talk with author Robin Maharaj. She's the co-author of Grilling Dahmer, The Interrogation of the Milwaukee Cannibal. She, along with Patrick Kennedy, wrote this book. Patrick Kennedy was the lead interrogator of Jeffrey Dahmer, spent 16 hours a day for 7 straight weeks, sitting in the same room across the table from Jeffrey Dahmer, talking about his crimes. We're going to talk about this book, and we're going to get inside information from Robin Maharaj about Grilling Dahmer next Tuesday on the Fuzzy Mike.
That's it for the Fuzzy Mike. Thank you. The Fuzzy Mike with Kevin Klein.
Fuzzy Mike.